it on the cloud, and I don't honestly know where that goes. So we're just not going to do that. So I forgot to pull up the picture, but we went over this last. So two of you have seen it at this point. We went over this the last workshop that we did, and it was actually really helpful, I think, to be able to see like a visual representation of what we're doing. So let me figure out where I put it, and then I will pull it up. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So Ray, this is mostly for you because they both came to the workshop yesterday, but just to kind of get an idea of what we're doing throughout these workshops through the week. So I just kind of jotted this down when I was at one of the conferences recently that I was at. And technically these are already pillars that I had in place, but I wanted to figure out a way to like represent them well so you could kind of see the idea of what we're trying to do. So these are for Building University, the online program that I have. Basically what we do is we create like a really solid foundation. So you'll see on that left hand side how it says foundation. And the three main components that we concentrate on is our mindset. So Nathan was just talking about how he didn't realize that like changing mindset or focusing on mindset was going to be such a big piece of, all of these other elements. So that's why I put it at the very bottom. Getting your nutrition in order to make sure that you're eating what you're supposed to so that you have the energy to be able to do things like fitness, right? Because if your nutrition's shit, then you're probably not going to want to work out, right? Like I know that that's the case for me. And then once we have those three elements in order, that's when we start working up the ladder and go over things like sleep, stress, social connection is the last piece. And then I put personal development at the top. We didn't talk about this yesterday, but personal development to me means mindset, but like on the next level. Like now I've already created my identity of who I want to be. Nathan, you had mentioned why you're doing the things that you're doing, right? Why it's important. And so then we go into the personal development, which is like, okay, I want to continue to grow. I feel like my mindset's in a good place, but like, how else do I level up, right? How do I help other people level up? And so that's why it's kind of at the top. So this is just my visual representation, and each of the workshops is going to work its way up the ladder. So we talked mindset yesterday, we'll talk nutrition today, fitness tomorrow, etc. So just so you guys can kind of see my train of thought. Any questions or comments about that? No? Okay, beautiful. So as you know, we are talking nutrition today. So we've had a few discussions, all three of us and me have had a few discussions about nutrition in the past. So I'd love to get your feedback as we're going. Feel free to raise your hand or beat me or whatever you want to do. But I'll ask a couple prompting questions like I did yesterday. So the first question that I want to talk about is diets. Who has ever been on a diet before? Okay, what have you tried? Did it work? Did it not work? Etc. So we'll just go in a corner since all three of you said that you have. Ray, what have you tried? What did and didn't work for you?
A diet that I tried was the vegan diet for a year, and it worked out in the beginning, but I think I just dove in too quickly from one day to the next eating a vegan diet, and I think that kind of I don't know, that impacted like the long-term success that I was going for, because I just went from one day from eating meat to literally the next day from no meat at all for like a whole year. Yeah, I struggled with it. And I mean, I did cheat, or I wouldn't say cheat. I did eat meat here and there, and I felt guilty about it. But yeah, that was my experience with my vegan diet.
Okay. Can I ask why you decided to try it?
Mostly for health reasons. Like I wasn't going through anything. Like I didn't have anything, but I just watched a lot of documentaries, read a lot of books about how having a vegan diet can impact your health positively.
Okay, great. And then you obviously didn't keep doing it, right? Or at least after a year. So what made you stop?
Like I said, I just switched so quick, like at an instant. I just missed meat too much. I do like meat. I am a meat eater. So yeah, that was the main reason why I just wanted to go back to eating meat. But it also did help me not be so picky with
Mm.
my food, and it opened my choices to like just eating whatever is there, like regardless if it's only vegetables, like I'll still eat it because now I like it.
Yeah. We also did the same. We only lasted 3 months. But we also tried, and it did. It really expanded the way that I used vegetables or highlighted vegetables in my food, in my diet. So I agree. I think that's a good way to like expand your mind, even if you don't stick with it. All right, Nathan, let's hear your experience. What did you try?
Well, I guess earlier on, maybe in my life, we're talking quite a while ago, but I would kind of like, um, I'm trying to say here. Oh, I basically just kind of restrict, like I kind of eat a lot. It was kind of like intermittent fasting. I kind of, without knowing about that, or it was just kind of off my own, I don't know, preference, I guess. So I'd eat a lot for breakfast and I'd eat a lot for lunch. But often I'd eat a much smaller dinner.
Okay.
And I basically was just kind of like trying to eat as little as I could, but that wasn't some days, not every day. I had to sustain myself, but it yeah, it was not sustainable because I was constantly hungry. So
Right?
but later on in the past couple of years, I'm kind of on and off checking macros without getting into it too much. I think it works if you can figure out your macros, but or at least like your calories and maybe your protein. But it's yeah, mixed feelings on it in general. But yeah, I'll stop there.
No, you're great. So I'd love to hear at least like one pro and one con from you tracking your macros.
Well, I think a pro is like if you really over time figure out what you really need for whatever your goals are. I mean, it's hard to, I'm not going to say, if you figure out what you need to eat and you actually eat that, you're going to see change, especially if you hadn't been doing anything before. So it's like kind of a guaranteed, well, nothing's, I don't want to say guaranteed, but like if you eat what you know you need to, then you're most likely going to see some change.
Okay. And what about a con?
Con, I found tracking to be really tedious and it does take up time. I think that's a factor to consider. And it kind of takes the joy. Well, two other things. One, I felt like I didn't always get enough like fruits and vegetables because I was um, too focused on protein at times, I think, or just other food or like getting either cutting out or adding food depending on the day. Um, Kind of rambling here, but what else? The other con? Oh, the other con. It can get in your head. Like, say you just want to go have a meal with your family or go out with friends. I think sometimes it's better just to go and do that and um, maybe not be hit all your goals that day.
Yeah, totally. Like being able to make those exceptions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you. Very cool. Awesome. Caitlin?
Uh, well, because of my IBS, I've been on a bunch of diets. I've tried the brat diet, the vegan diet, the FODMAP diet. It's exhausting. Um, and I mean they work temporarily, but they're not realistic or long term. Uh, so
Okay,
yeah, I'm
great.
still trying to discover what will work for me.
Great. Thank you. Okay, excellent. So I love that all of you had similar themes. Seemed like maybe a lot of those were not sustainable? Question mark. Maybe you didn't stick with them super long. Okay, been there definitely. I've tried a good handful of things too. So let's talk a little bit about diet. So that word is a kind of a dirty word for me. I don't love it. But what does diet mean? What is like the definition of diet?
Good question. I guess I'm not really sure.
Okay, anyone?
I is supposed to stick to certain foods,
Okay.
to only eat certain things.
Yeah, to me, diet is something that an individual person does to reach a certain goal.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Like they'll eat certain foods or limit their foods to reach a goal that they're going for.
Okay, absolutely. And so a lot of people have this association of restrictedness or some type of limitation, right? I heard both of those words there. When it comes to diet, the technical definition of a diet is the food that you eat, and that's it. Right? And it has this negative connotation to it. You hear diet and you think, oh, restrictive eating. Oh, I'm eating less, or I'm eating specific foods, or I'm staying away from other foods. But realistically speaking, like go to Webster's dictionary, it's just a description of the way that you eat. Right? And so that's where we want to start looking at. I actually try not to use the word. When I talk to my clients, I say, how's your nutrition? Right? Instead of how's your diet? And really, it's just because of the way that we see it, we look at the word diet and the way that we think about it. It just has that weird, like negative, icky connotation to it. You guys kind of see what I mean? Yeah. But technically, it just means like what you eat. So, like, very plain English, diet is the food that you eat. And so that's where we kind of want to shift our perspective and think, okay, how can I give myself as much nutrients as possible rather than how can I take as much stuff away from what I'm eating as possible, right? And if we start to think about living in this abundance mindset and like what can I add to my diet instead of what can I take away from my diet, like that is a full shift in perspective altogether. And we start to think about differently like how we approach our foods, right? Any questions or comments? No? Okay, cool, perfect. So one of the things that I really like is this idea. There's a lot of different versions of it, a lot of different rules, but I'm going to introduce you guys to a rule called the 80-20 rule. Has anyone heard that? Yeah? Okay, cool. I see two head nods. Caitlin, Nathan, who wants to take this one on? Nathan, go ahead.
I guess my understanding of it is um, you eat 80% of whatever, as your goals, foods, the healthy foods, and 20% you can, kind of eat less nutritious or whatever is unhealthy, maybe, or less healthy.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. So there's lots of different versions of it. I think I've heard it in even business books where they're like 80% of your problems comes from 20% of your clients and stuff like that, right? But the basic concept is sound. I've heard also people who are a little bit stricter do a 90-10, but like exactly what you said, eating 80% or more of what you know you should be eating and try to eat 20% or less of what you know you probably shouldn't be eating as often, right? And so just trying to make fewer exceptions, but having like the bulk of it be better foods. So this brings us back to a point that we talked about yesterday, dichotomous thinking, which Caitlin, I know that you like know what it is now. So tell us about dichotomous thinking.
Dichotomous thinking is like black and white thinking.
Hmm.
This is good, this is bad, this is good, this is bad.
Right? And so healthy and unhealthy. And I saw you, Nathan. I appreciate that. Trying not to use those words. Because I think we've had that conversation a little bit before too, right? Because sometimes if we put those foods into that healthy or non-healthy category, like, yeah, that's kind of how you want to think about the 80-20, but it really like paints a black and white picture to where we're not seeing like what's the specific benefit or purpose of this food, right? Yeah? Okay, excellent. So with the 80-20 rule, with dichotomous thinking, if you guys want to look at different ways to think about healthy or unhealthy, it's longer, but I try to say nutrient dense foods versus nutrient void foods. So let's talk about some nutrient dense foods. What are some things that you think could be or should be in that 80%? Just bing them out.
Avocado.
Okay,
Yeah, I was gonna say like any vegetable or fruit.
yeah, great.
I was going to say blueberries.
Okay,
Red meat,
okay,
or any kind of meat that's got a lower percentage of fat.
there we go. Yep,
Nuts.
nuts. Okay. Cool. So we all kind of know, right? what the basic idea is. So what do we say would be in like that 20%?
Rice, white rice.
I mean, maybe. That's in my 80%,
What
right? And
about
it's going to be different for every person. So that's a good point. Go ahead, right?
what about like bread?
Maybe. Depends, right? Nathan, you got anything?
I was thinking of donuts, also maybe chocolate, but I don't know. That's kind of a harder one, I think, because I've heard there's benefits of dark chocolate. So
Exactly. Now we're muddying the waters a little bit, which is totally fine. Because sometimes they need to be muddied, right? So let's say that you're doing dark chocolate because you're trying to get the antioxidant properties from it. Like, yeah, it's delicious. It's technically still sweet, but you're still trying to get those benefits, and that's that purpose of that food, right? Ray, do you remember the almond butter biscuit bar that I gave you?
Oh my gosh,
It's fucking
yes.
delicious, right?
I always
But it
remember
has
that.
14 grams of sugar in it. So, no added sugar. I'm not eating them this week. However, it is a perfect, like, easy to eat snack for me before practice because it's easily digestible. It is a simple sugar. Yes, it has added sugar, but I also don't have a ton of added sugar in the rest of my diet. So it's not as big of a deal. Do you guys see what I mean?
Yes.
So we can kind of muddy the waters just depending on like what we're using that food for. So let's talk a little bit about exceptions. So dessert, maybe drinking, whatever. Like, what are some exceptions that you would make, and why would you make those exceptions in your diet? What would that 20% be?
I would say like any kind of sweet bar, kind of like the almond butter uh, biscuit, or like granola bars, maybe
Okay.
even, but like the s'mores or like the chocolate chip ones.
Okay. And is that an all-time exception, or is that for a certain reason, or?
Uh, Maybe more of an all-time exception.
Okay. And so that's where we have to be a little bit careful. We just have to make sure that that stays within the 20%. Because if that's always an exception and you eat like six of them a day,
Yeah.
then we're pushing that 20% pretty hard, right? But yeah, totally. Sometimes if you need extra protein, you got to make the sacrifice because there's not that many great protein bars out there. There are some that have less sugar in them, but they usually have sugar substitutes. So you got to pick your poison, right? Okay, great. Anyone else? Any exceptions that you feel like you would make and why?
Alcohol.
Okay. What would be your exception?
When I go out with friends.
Okay, like a social thing. Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. We talked about purpose of meal and building university too, right? And that was one of them is like just to enjoy yourself and have that social treat or whatever, right? Totally.
Hmm.
Nathan?
um, oh, I guess one would be Gatorade. I love Gatorade.
Okay.
Or those kind of drinks, but I don't know. I try to only have something like that when I've really sweated, or like I don't know. If I do, I try to maybe keep my sweets down a little bit the rest of the day.
Yeah,
um,
that's a great example because Gatorade is literally made exactly for that, right? Is to be able to replenish both your sugars and your electrolytes, right? And so I think we talked about this. I'm not sure if it was in one of our workshops or not, but I definitely talked about it with my clients. But Gatorade was originally designed for like ultra marathon runners and like football players that are practicing for like 5 hours a day out in the sun. You know what I mean? So like it is really sugary, but intentionally so, right?
Huh.
And so then if you are putting in the work and you're sweating and stuff like that, then like that's a really good exception. That's a really good time to do it. Maybe not if you're just going to drink it for fun, right? Yeah, absolutely. Cool. And so special occasions like having cake on your birthday or whatever, like those are different purposes, different reasons that we make that might make those 20% exceptions. And one of the reasons that we're trying to do this 80/20 is that sustainability aspect again, right? So what happens if we try to do 100%? Right, you know this well.
You burn out.
You burn out. Yeah, totally. You get exhausted, right? What does it feel like when you're like trying to run at 100%? Not even just diet, but in general. When you're trying to run at 100%, how does that feel after a couple days?
Not good.
Okay, Tell me some emotions. What did you feel like?
Well, for my example, I was feeling guilty.
Mm.
I usually end up being nauseous and sick.
Yeah.
Um, oh, 100%. Yeah. Yeah, it just, sometimes I overcorrect then, like it's get off track because I'm like, well, I was so good in this day, then it seems like,
Mm.
or I get so tired of it, like I don't want to do anything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in the nutrition aspect, that's basically yo-yo dieting, right? You go as hard as
Yes.
you can for a while, and then you're like, fuck this. I can't do that. And so you just go the other direction, right? Or some people
Yeah.
do like where they're really good or behaved or whatever you want to call it during the week, and then the weekends, which can just ruin the whole week, technically speaking, right? So it's a little bit more of like a conservative way, I think, to approach how you're eating because it's so much less black and white and it's so much less restrictive. And again, we're thinking about how can I add nutrients? How can I add foods to my diet? What can I eat instead of what can I not eat or can I try not to eat? Has anyone heard me use this term, maybe Caitlin, before, rebel mentality?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of like when you are so strict with yourself that you're like, I'm not going to do this thing, whatever that thing is. And then back in the back of your brain is like, oh, all I want to do is that thing. Like, what? It doesn't make sense, right? Logically, we understand that, like, if we make a decision, we should go with those decisions. But if those decisions are so far one direction, there's this little voice in our head that's like, what are you talking about? I'm going to do whatever I want. Right? So that's why this moderation piece is being able to make those small adaptations, the small changes. And again, think about that abundance, adding to your diet. What can I eat is a huge, huge shift in perspective. Do you guys kind of see what I mean?
Mhm.
Okay, beautiful. So what we're going to do is do a quick takeaway. So either something that you feel like you learned, something that was a new or different way of thinking of things, or an action item that you can do immediately to be able to start taking this into the real world. So Ray, do you mind if I pick on you first?
Yes, an action that I would take is because I am interested in doing the vegan diet again,
Okay.
but this time actually slowly making my way into it instead of just going from one day to the next. So like how you said, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. But yeah, just like taking it day by day instead of just going from one day to the next. From like eating meat to not eating meat.
Yeah. So that's a little bit more of like a learning process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Nathan?
I think I probably, well, I had heard of it before, but I think I'll take away the 80/20, um, just to, and think about it as more nutrient terms of nutrient dense, how much nutrients I can add in.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Cal was making fun of me the other day because we were having a conversation with a couple of our friends' moms. And they were like, "Oh, are you guys like the healthy kind?" And he's like, "No, like we eat real food." But then she's over here describing how she ate nachos for dinner, and Cal was like, "Okay, well, yeah, if we don't have a vegetable in there, Cal or Michelle gets pretty upset." She's like, "If everything on your plate is brown, then that's not good." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely, 100%." So yeah, we eat real food, right? We just try to make as much of it real food as possible and have those few exceptions, right? Cool.
Yeah, and I try to be careful. Like I've realized with talking with coworkers and friends, like everybody has their own version of what's healthy. And well, for one, I'm not dietitian, but for two, it's I realize they're sometimes emotionally attached too, so I don't want
Mm.
to offend or and yeah,
Do you go
discourage
right?
them.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add to what I was saying that implementing the what can I eat
Mm-hmm.
instead of what can't I eat,
Mm-hmm.
because there's a lot of things that that people that try the vegan diet that what they can eat, but yeah, mostly people are like people that I know. They're like, oh, well, I can't eat this and I can't eat that and I can't do that. But
And
yeah,
it feels
implementing
restrictive, right? Like that was their
yes,
choice. It's not you
yes.
can't eat it, you just chose not to.
So yeah, implementing the action step that I would take is just seeing what I can eat instead of
Cool.
what I can't eat.
Awesome. All right, Caitlin.
Um, I would probably say the 80-20 rule as well. I'm just getting off of the brat diet. I had a hot dog yesterday and I didn't throw it up. Yay! So it looks like my stomach bug has passed.
Awesome.
So hopefully trying to get back into that 80-20 of exploring what works for my stomach and what doesn't. My 80-20 obviously is going to look different from everybody else's because of the limitations that I have.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And that really brings up a good point. So I'll use this as my closing point. So it's going to look different for every single person depending on where you are with your nutrition. See, again, the word diet. It's going to look different for every single person, but really thinking about like, how can I eat the best that I can at the level that I'm at? And so for her, right, I might not say that a hot dog is like the best option for generally speaking, but if that's all you can put down, like eat a fucking hot dog. You know what I'm saying? Like, eating something is almost always going to be better than eating nothing, especially when we're trying to be athletic and lift and stuff like that. Like we need to build our bodies up. And so if it's eating something that might be a little bit less nutrient dense and not eating it all, eat the thing, right? So if that's ever the exception that you need to make, like it is better to fuel your body and then try to make those upgrades from there. Make sense?
Mhm.
Cool. Perfect. All right. I appreciate all coming today. Tomorrow we are doing a fitness topic, so hopefully I will see you then. Thank you so much and talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Hey.
All right. See ya.